The reason I'm releasing two videos on the same day is because I believe these two films offer opposite views to the same problem, and while strikingly different in form and content, they both should be seen, thought of, and discussed. In this one, I talk about Eliza Hittman's Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. And if you don't know the channel, I invite you guys to subscribe, follow me on social media, leave a comment, and yes, I'm the Brazilian guy who talks movies. Let's move along! Where does the power of a scene come from? There are thousands of ways, infinite maybe, that you can create a great scene, and while I'll probably tackle this in future videos, and you guys might see tons of cheap tries and cheap conversations about it all over the internet. But anyways, it's tempting but also way too vague to say that great scenes are the ones that impact you in a way that you will most likely remember forever. I don't think this is exactly the case in the one I perceive to be the greatest scene of any film released in 2020, because in its strongest moment, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always combines filmmaking techniques in a way I rarely seen before. It all happens with a long close-up with the camera standing still, and Sidney Flanigan doing what I consider to be the best performance of the year. But before we get there, let's dial back a bit. In the opening moments of this film, we see Autumn, a teenage girl in high school from a little town in Pennsylvania, singing a very uncomfortable song in her school talent show. And this is just an invitation, as this uncomfortable feeling will never again leave the screen. As we follow along the plot, and I will as always discuss elements of it, so if you haven't watched it, be aware. Eliza not only dives us into that suffocating little city, but in Autumn's state of mind. In that sense, her name is a perfect rhyme with the visual style, as most colors are washed up, and the air itself seems to be brownish, muddy, like walking and breathing is enough of a task to make anything else seem like an uphill walk. Even when they reach New York and try to distract themselves, it's like there's always the elephant in the room that doesn't let them, or us, feel at ease. These shots are always close, we never see NY in its splendor, but instead we see its entrails, the subway life, the blinding lights diffused on the background. There is no glamour, there are no dreams being made. Still, Eliza and cinematographer Helene Louvard choose to use indirect lighting on those girls' faces, softening our view of them and the road around them, a delicate and feminine touch that helps in tackling its polarizing subject matter without ever punching in any direction. But Eliza is indeed very clear on her thoughts of abortion and how it should be legalized, but still, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always is less about that and more about the violence that those girls suffer, either from abusive relationships or from other relationships where the other side doesn't even know it's being abusive. Take the character of Theodore Pellerin and that abrasive scene down at the end, ask him about him making out with Skylar, and he will tell you she was totally into it. By the way, the holding of the hands is a subtle and moving touch that speaks for itself. Like all great films about minorities and inequalities, this makes you feel bad, either for being a girl and knowing and feeling how hard reality really is, or for being a guy and realizing how much of a douchebag you might have been in your entire life. And be you in favor of abortion or not, to me, if you ask, it's complicated, but I stand by saying I don't have a saying in it. If you can empathize with the pain that that girl goes through, well, maybe you should rethink your priorities. Still, in a filmmaking perspective, Never, Rarely does everything it can to get the best out of the story it has. And you don't have to agree with its content to admire its technique. What can't happen is conservative critics and audiences avoiding the film because it touches on a subject they disagree beforehand. That way, it only leads to more disagreements and lesser understanding. But moving along and coming back to the scene I mentioned in the beginning of this video, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always reaches its peak when the beautiful simplicity of its technique tones down even more. We see Autumn through a still shot, close on her face, enough for us to feel her getting uncomfortable, but not for us to invade her space. A social attendant makes her a series of questions and repeats over and over the lingering title of the film, to which she answers, or doesn't, with an amount of pain one could only imagine, except they make us feel it. It's a masterful scene that uses everything we experienced for the past hour in a perfect combination of direction, writing, and acting. It involves no special camera movement, no remarkable effects, no strikingly smart dialogue. It's just a very real moment, taken into the screen. Therefore, if Promising Young Woman works by lying to us, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always does by telling us the harsh truth.